I've noticed that there is this like tangible moment where you know that you've made a connection, and it happens in a Discord voice call. You can have somebody join your Discord. That's a big move. Like somebody joining your Discord is a big thing. They are saying yes. They are saying, yes, I will join this. You can even have somebody send some messages. You can have people drop some texts into Discord. You can have people do a lot of different things, pick up roles, all that kind of stuff. But there is this one moment where you know that this is something actually happening, that you've actually connected with somebody on a real basis. And it's the moment during a voice call that they turn on their camera. If people are willing to like show you their latest Funko Pop and they turn on their camera to show it to you, you've made a connection. That is intimacy. Like that is a level of relationship of somebody saying, I'm willing to just for a second, let you into my world beyond the internet. And that is like huge in connecting with folks.
Control-Alt-Redeem is for anyone called to ministry in the digital frontier. Gamers, streamers, and everyday believers navigating life online. Each episode equips you to live on mission and the real stories of lives being changed. Reset your expectations, reframe your mission, and redeem the space you're already in. This is where digital ministry gets practical, creative, grounded, and hopeful, one episode at a time.
All right, everybody, welcome in to Control-Alt-Redeem. We are resetting the culture and redeeming the space. And so you know the deal if you've been here before. We've got a podcast. We've got a guest. Today we have Nerd Pastor Nate from Checkpoint Church. Welcome in.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's so fun to actually have people on that I've met in person a couple of times, and we've had a couple of conversations, but when we're at a conference, there's lots of other people that you're connecting with, and with leading a church, you have a chance for some of your people from your church to be able to hang out and meet you. So we were just both at Nerd Culture Ministry Summit. Were you there? I'm trying to remember. I know you were there in Colorado Springs the first time it was there, and this time. Were you there in Texas or not when it was in Marble Falls?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in Marble Falls. And then technically my first like LTN live event would have been the LTN Con the year before Marble Falls. So that was my OG days. And then I was at the virtual like COVID era LTN Con online, but definitely, a different vibe for that one.
Oh yeah. Well, I never made it to LTN Con. I have gone with LTN to help do a board gaming con. So I've gone to Grand Con and helped out with LTN, but I didn't do LTN Con. That would have been a fun thing to do. Well, I love that interconnectedness because we get a chance to catch up, to see what God is up to understand. So if we back up, I like to always start with, how did you first hear about Twitch? How did you get onto Twitch? And it's not always, hey, I was going to be a streamer when I got on, but talk about yourself first, and then how did Checkpoint Church come about? So we got two different pieces there. If you can give us kind of a story, and I'll stop you if I want to get more details, or we can come back to it later.
Sure. So I would say they're very interconnected. I am like the perfect age for newgrounds.com and YouTube. And so like those were my bread and butter internet days. I was hanging out there all day long, every day, just loving that part of the internet. And so that's very much my like origin story. And then Twitch was always this like other thing. Like I was never on Justin TV. I never really had a desire to watch any of the like OG Twitch streamers. I still really don't know them very well. Like I know their names and maybe I've caught some of their clips, but like I've never just been a lurker in like Ninja's stream, right? Like that's never been my vibe. But I always felt a sort of kindred spirit, a sort of connection with the internet. I am a digital native, like through and through. That is a part of my identity. The other part of my identity is I'm a pastor's kid that wanted to, or didn't want to, but felt the call. I got a tap on my shoulder to pursue ministry. Actually wanted to do like anything else, being a PK and seeing the life that a pastor lives. And so I was like, maybe I could be an actor or a comedian or a chef or a ninja. I think those are my options growing up in elementary school.
Sorry, I like that combination. A chef or a ninja. Like they both work with knives, so they're either's a good option there.
Yeah, well, anything that had an anime about it, because I'm also a major weeb, and so the anime life is also very much a part of it. But yeah, so I grew up digital native through and through, pastor's kid, got a call to seek out ministry, to pursue whatever God might be doing in my life, to be whether that's a pastor or an elder, a deacon, or a leader in the church, just a whatever, and wound up discerning that I was being called to be an elder in the United Methodist Church. And so I pursued that. I went to Duke Seminary. And while I was in seminary, I had this like moment that I realized had sort of been prepared for me, where there was this severed connection between internet culture and the church. And for some reason, the nerds, the internet people did not feel a real like connectedness. There was a bridge that was needed. And so I felt like maybe that's what this call is all about. Maybe I'm called to serve the nerds, the geeks, and the gamers. And went to my conference. That's kind of our direct oversight in the United Methodist Church. And I went to them, and I went to specifically the person who was tasked with developing new church plants. And I went to them and said I had this vision for a church for nerds, geeks, and gamers. I said, we're going to go to Comic-Con. It's going to be incredible. We're going to go get to know people. We're going to tour the country at Comic-Cons. We're going to connect them maybe via like a digital hub, or maybe here in North Carolina, we'll do like a comic book shop or a used video game shop. And then in the midst of all of that, we'll connect the people that we meet at cons. And the church developer at the time, huge nerd, totally got it. D&D nerd through and through, like still played with his college buddies, and got the vision, caught the vibe, knew what was going on. February 2020. March 2020 happens and everything pivots. Comic-Con ministry, I don't think so. That was not going to be happening then. And so the vision had to change. I knew that I'd been given the thumbs up for this church plant for nerds. I knew that the conference had blessed it, approved it, set aside funds for it. All the stuff was ready to go, but COVID changed all of it. And so come July 1, we hit the ground brainstorming and trying to say like, well, what do we do then? What is the plan? And what made the most sense was, well, YouTube's pretty hard. It's something that didn't really have it had some live streaming in 2020, but it definitely was not up to snuff with where everybody was going, and where everybody was going was Twitch. And so the concept was, hey, this is a place that exists like a Comic-Con that we can tap into from an evangelism aspect. Like this is a mission field that we can tap into and build communication and community. And so we said, let's do Twitch. Let's figure it out. And so August 1st, 2020, we launched our Twitch channel for Checkpoint Church. I think maybe like 3 weeks later, we were affiliates and it was off to the races. Like it was just a huge boost. We clicked with folks, made a ton of sense. Everything worked. And it's, memories ever since.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the willingness and readiness to pivot. You're in the process of planning for the church. And like not everyone pivoted really well in the middle of COVID. Some people did not react or respond well, and I can understand that, but you were in the process of moving forward to start. It would have been really easy for that to be, well, it was a good idea, but now it's not going to work. Sorry, you can't do anything. So I love wait a minute, this is still a vision that God has given. So how does it happen? How do we pivot? How do we shift? Where can we do that? So did you do some research into Twitch before deciding, yes, this is absolutely it? And what were some of those things that you saw that would have made it make sense that, yeah, this is exactly where we should be?
Yeah, so July 1 is when appointment season starts in the Methodist Church. So I technically got appointed July 1, and we didn't launch on Twitch until August 1. And so I spent that entire month just researching, fleshing out, doing kind of groundwork, seeing what I could build, not so much as a foundation, but almost just like tilling the land, seeing what would make sense. And it was during that time I discovered God Squad at the time, now XP Church. I discovered Love Thy Nerd, and started to ask good questions of them, try to see what I could discern from their ministry. And those were really the two that were like doing nerd ministry at the time that I found right away. Like they were the top of the SEO on Google search. So whoever was doing their SEO at the time, kudos to you, because you made it easy to find you. And then in the midst of all that, as a part of being a church planner, and especially in a denomination, they were also sending me constant resources of like what it means to plant a church. How do you plant a church? How do you do this work? And so I was working my way through all of those research notes. I had a coach at the time that was helping me work through all of the hard questions of how do we get this thing started. And once I felt like we had done a sufficient amount of like groundwork in July, August was like, okay, now we're going to learn by doing. And now we just need to figure out, hey, nobody's really done exactly what I'm doing in exactly the way that I was doing it. I knew that I didn't want to just like focus in on one game. I knew that I wanted to create some kind of true like church online. And so aside again from like God Squad Church at the time, there really was so few folks doing this beyond just churches outside of churches, churches through churches, like a life church that might be doing an online presence from their existing ministry. And so it became the research field was being in it and experiencing it and failing a lot, messing up a lot, trying to do Bible studies and realizing that like, hey, you know what? A first time chatter probably isn't ready for a Bible study. They probably don't want to engage with your Bible study day one. They aren't interested in hopping over from a Twitch chat to a Zoom call for like a, face to face debrief. That was too big of a jump. So yeah, it came down to the learning curve, playing games that I knew that I loved and wanted to play, and seeing what kind of viewers the algorithm would send our way.
Yeah, well, just piggybacking off of the learning and experimenting and trying things, what are some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome with helping to get Checkpoint up? So yeah, there, you can get going, you can get affiliate, but that's just one piece of the going forward. It's like, how do you maintain, how do you keep going, how do all of those things? So no doubt there have been some obstacles over the years, some difficulties that either happened online or with your denomination or in your personal life. Are there any of those things that you've worked really hard and now you're on the other side of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that boundaries were pretty crucial for me from the ground up. So I mentioned, right, like I'm a PK, pastor's kid, grew up with a dad in ministry. And so saw the like burden that bad boundaries can put upon a family. They can put upon, I got 2 kids and I want to be there for them. And so I knew and was very well aware of that. And then it didn't take long before I met people like a Jate. I don't know if you've ever had Jate on the show, but like Jate streams a bonkers amount of hours. And so it was like, I'm not going to do that. I know that's a boundary, like hard and fast. So that was something that was like an initial thing that I had to overcome, was like, how much am I actually putting into this? How much am I actually going to be doing in the streaming side of this? So that was crucial. And then another thing was that I was a parachute drop. So I was a true blue church plant. I did not have a lead team. I did not have leaders from another church joining me. It was me. And I had, my family, and I had some dear close friends that were like, yeah, we'll give you a chance here for a couple of months and give you some support and likes and that kind of thing. But beyond that, it really was reaching a totally unreached community, a totally untapped space for me. There were no existing relationships or resources or connections to tap in on, which I think was a bit of a challenge. Yeah, that might have been the initial stuff. And then the question became like, okay, so if I know I'm not going to stream like Jate, if I'm not going to be doing the 3-week subathon, as Supersonic says there, I'm not going to be doing that. So what do we do? And the answer for me in that initial year became, I'll stream for like 9 hours a week, 3 hours at a time, 3 days a week. And then the question became, well, what about the people that want to do more than that? And the answer came in the best way, in my opinion, and it came from within the people that we're forming.
Fantastic.
They were the ones that said, hey, you need to know about this thing called Discord. And that was where the magic really happened. I think that was our first real pivot into something that was just the most meaningful part of what it means to be a church online.
Oh, that's fantastic. Before we dive in and look at the idea of Discord, I really think that there's 2 levels of one, being prepared, which you had church training that would help you figure out how to be a church planter. So you had that already. So that was definitely going to help set you up to be able to go into Twitch with the idea of being a church. But let's study for a little bit and now let's just start. I think people get stuck in one of 2 things. They either say, let's just start, we don't know what we're doing, we're going to make a whole bunch of mistakes, and you run roughshod over some people because you're not learning the culture, you're not spending time. But there's also you could have sat, well, let's study this for 6 months. Let's make sure we've got it all diagrammed out of exactly what we're going to do. Let's get our whole schedule together and then launch. There is something between those 2 spaces that people go into of the let's prepare nothing and go, and let's wait until we have every answer answered that could ever come up, and then we'll go forward. So I love the variety within there and the learning along the way. I'll tell you what, Twitch is one of the best things for learning from the community. So yeah, so you shifted over to Discord. What were the things that you began doing in Discord so that it was more than, hey, I'm just a streamer and you come and you can be in my community as I stream whatever I'm doing. You're welcome. You're a part of it. How did you do that, and what were the learning things that you learned as you went into Discord? Because I'm really fascinated with how other people develop their Discord community. What are the pluses? What are the things they've learned? Because I'm still trying to grow and learn in my Discord community.
Yeah. So Discord was something that I had only heard about. I had never really known much about how it actually works or what it actually does. And so it was something very similar to Twitch, where it was like always on the outskirts. And I started to poke around and explore and ask questions about the folks that wanted us to have a Discord server. Like, why? What does it do? What does it mean? Why would you be there? What would make you want to show up there? And what I tried was a practice that I've recommended to folks since then. And I saw that a Discord server was super modular. And so I thought, okay, well, this is something that I can build channels. If I can build voice channels, text channels, all these things, what does that mean for a church context? And so I went back to, my dad was not only a pastor, but also a church planter. And so in the midst of his planting, I grew up in a church plant church and learned to love it and be really a part of that experience. So I had things to learn from that church. And so I took a blueprint of that church and I paid attention to the rooms. And I was like, what's the purpose of this room? It's a pretty modern looking church. And so it's got like the coffee hall. It's got the sections, for very specific purposes like that. But then there's the classic of like the sanctuary. There's the Bible study rooms. There's the children's room. There's the nursery. There's all these kind of spaces. What's the purpose of these spaces? And so I started to build the Discord server like I was building a blueprint. And so
Little
I
Miss
did
Lizzie
each
just
folder.
followed.
I tried to create that like a different section of a church building. And then I would build out sections, rooms within that space. So what is the space that purely just serves as like fellowship? What is the equivalent of a fellowship hall? And then what is the space where more spiritual matters might be undertaken or prayers might be undertaken, all those kind of things. And so we would just play around with what does it look like to recreate the church experience using Discord as if it was a series of rooms. And that worked really well for us because it turned this space into something that was all at once familiar while also, utilizing the assets that we had in this new Discord space. And so since then, we've kind of pivoted and changed things around a little bit, but that was the energy that we went into this thing with. And what it revealed to us is that Discord could be our church building. And so that became kind of the nomer that we would offer to this space is like, Discord, Twitch is our evangelism. Twitch is our outreach. Twitch is our place where we're getting to know people, but then we want them to come and join our church building. And really up until that point, at least from a United Methodist perspective, all of my church leaders were like, how are you going to count members? How are you going to know who's a part of your church? They were so confused, but then Discord was able to give us more grounded language to like, this is our church building. This is our gathering space. This is what's ours. If everywhere else we're in other people's spaces, this is the thing that is truly like, you're joining our building. You're walking through our doors and entering into something with us. And so that was a mindset shift that was absolutely crucial for figuring out what differentiated the work of the pastor, the work of the initial launch team, the work of the initial church to go and reach people versus the community building, what's actually happening within the church walls that's forming that initial culture.
Yeah, that's really, I love that approach of thinking of, like, if you were building a building, what's the function of this room? If you're building a Discord, what's the function of this channel? That's a really good image. I've heard other people talk about that in different ways of what you create, like a home, and what's a living room for, so you want to have that space. But I like that idea of thinking through you would know what a Bible study room is. You would know what that is. You would know what the fellowship hall is. You would understand those things. So yeah, building those into it so that you can think through, I've got all of the things we need. The other beautiful thing with digital, you can go build whatever room you need for whatever capacity. You don't have to have a budget to go do it. You could just add a new room to the community at any time that you are welcoming people in. So I like that image that you're giving there. I did see in the chat that there was, Trombone was saying that you did a Discord reset and a value audit. What was that all about?
Yeah, so we've done, I think we're on our third or fourth Discord reset at this point. And essentially what we would do is we would go through the sidebar and just sort of evaluate. I would turn to some of our leaders in the space, of which Trombone is one, and I would ask, what are the things that are working here? What are the things that are absolutely not working? What needs to move somewhere else? What needs to kind of just hit refresh? And so that's actually turned into our most recent iteration, which I'm sort of seeing. I'll use a term that I haven't yet that I'll try to explain, which is a discipleship pathway. And so you've undoubtedly heard that term before, but for anybody in the audience that has not, this is how do you get someone from just hearing about Jesus, just hearing about whatever ministry or outreach you're doing, down to truly being like baptized and then towards a process of sanctification. So what are we doing as we're getting somebody from A to Z? That's the discipleship pathway. And so from a church planting angle, the question became like, okay, well, what space then is our evangelistic space? What space is our community building space? What space is our discipling space? What space is our leadership space? And so on and so forth. And so for a while there, it was platform specific. And so Twitch would be our outreach. Discord would be our community building. And then we would have YouTube eventually come along that would turn into our disciple building space. And then we would build up leaders that we call level 2 within our space. And those are people that are opt-in. That's the closest thing that we have even today to members. And so we would do that. And then we would engage those members in a more deeper capacity. So that was our pathway. Now our Discord sidebar is the pathway. So it's we no longer really see the pathway as being outside of that platform. Of course, there's still elements of reaching people on YouTube, of doing things like that. But we wanted people to join our Discord server and right away be able to, like, with their eye, track the sidebar and get more involved. And so you start out with like the usual stuff on the sidebar of here's announcements, here's where you're at, let us know about you and introductions, that kind of stuff. And then as you get a little bit deeper, it's like, okay, well, maybe talk to us about whatever's going on, like shoot the breeze. Let's just hang out. We'll engage you with like a question of the day, that kind of stuff. As you get a little bit deeper, we want to know about you now. Tell us more about your niche interests. What do you geek out about? What are you a nerd for? And once we get a little bit deeper, okay, we want to get spiritual with you. What's your spiritual background? Are you interested in this conversation? Here's prayer requests. And then you get a little bit deeper and it's like, we want you to join some people. We want you to join a small group. We want you to be a part of our book club or our anime club or our video game club or so on and so forth. And then once you do that, we're like, we want you to lead. Come join level 2. So on and so forth. So the pathway left platform specific and became something more intentional that people could walk down as they walk the sidebar.
Yeah. So literally it is from top to bottom. The deeper you go, the more involved and invested you. I like that thinking. Some of the time, the way I've done it as I've set things up are, what are the things that are most active and I want people to find, and I migrate those to the top, so that they're always right there, easy to be accessible. But I like that idea of progressing further down, because if you are more active, well, you're more inclined to scroll down to the bottom to get to those things that you are participating in. So, one of the things that I love about the Twitch space is being able to make global friends and stay connected. And some of them we do get over to the Discord. Not all of them, end up in Discord and fully involved in that space, but Samarella has been in and out of the hospital. So we just got an update from Samarella. We've been praying for her. She had a heart transplant. She was just sharing that the doctors are giving her a thumbs up on everything that was going on. Let me go back to that if I can find it. Where was that? Okay. There it is. So the doctors have officially cleared her of the tumors, the heart issue, and the cancer, and you don't have to worry about it as your body is starting to accept the new heart. So that is really good news. Praise God for that. And I love how you were saying you're starting to learn that all praise really does go to God when we celebrate what God is up to and doing things. So even when we're thanking others, we are praising God. Supersonic saying maybe a different source there. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Mel said no on her end, and I've lost your image a little bit. You've gone all grainy on me, Nate.
Yeah, I tried to drop my performance to see if that would help at all.
Yeah, that's another.
So I'm down to 720.
Okay. Well, that didn't.
See if that makes
something in there doesn't like us today. This must be a really important conversation somebody needs to hear. And so I don't always like to give Satan that much credit, but You know, there is a level at which sometimes it just feels like, wow, there's something really good going on, and tech will get in the way. All right, you're looking a little better there now.
I turned it back up. I could always try and select a different camera, see if this,
go
setting might.
ahead, give it a
better.
try while we're playing with this. Maybe 30 bats. Good to see you. Nate is returning to the Tater Cam. You just got one earbud, so you're not able to help there.
See if this camera looks any better.
Sure doesn't look like it, no.
I'm back up to high 2.
Got to remove the Vaseline from the lens there, buddy.
Undoubtedly. Well, I could always try and not record on my end if that would work, but it's for some reason locked me down to the like incredibly low EP, even though I've got it set to 900p.
180 would not be doing anything. No wonder it looks so bad.
Yeah, and they still are upset. I guess let's try and not let them optimize.
Hey, there we go. That looks better already.
All right, so I'm gonna tell them they're not allowed to optimize, and we'll see how that looks.
Okay, that looks much better.
Okay, cool. I'll have to stand for the rest of it, but that'll be fine. It's better for me anyway.
Samarella, is it just me, or does it feel like Nate looks like a PhD professor in medicine?
Well, that's very kind. I am not a PhD in anything, but maybe someday.
And before we jump back in, Supersonic, doing a spot of tea for me. Spot of tea. Drinking Earl Grey today, buddy. Earl Grey all day. All right, so let's jump back in. We've got a couple of little things there, some tech issues. This will all get edited out in post-production because we've got a great crew. Well, it's just me, but I am learning. I'm getting better. So I'm glad we got the cam. That looks really nice there, Nate. So sorry you're going to have to stand. Now we froze. I spoke too soon.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, I can try and bump it down to 480 instead of 180.
Oh, 180 was just miserable. Well, we'll just keep going. If we need to change, we'll pause and make that change there. So just kind of shifting here. So we've talked about Discord, the audit, getting that set up, getting started. When did you?
So we didn't talk about the audit. We talked about the pathway.
Oh, okay.
So the values audit, I call it a virtue audit that Trombone was talking about.
Okay.
The gist of that concept is whenever we very first started, we kind of set out some like goals of what do we want our virtue to be in this space? Like, what are we doing here? What is the goal? What is the mission? What are our values in this space? And so for us in the UMC, it's to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. It's our mission and our discipline. And so we struck out with like, hey, that's an important thing. Are we making disciples? And so we would check in every single month and just kind of ask ourselves that value question of like, are we making headway on forming disciples? Are we making headway on transforming the world? Are we still talking about Jesus? Like, what is it that we're doing here? And we would just make sure that we never really had like a value drift, and instead allowed our values to be the thing that drive our adjustments rather than adjusting away from them. And that was a helpful bit of structure that we did in our first couple of years.
Yeah, that is really helpful because it's easy to have mission drift where you start with one thing and then you add something to it, you add a third thing, and suddenly you're no longer doing the thing that you were called to do to begin with. So making sure you don't have mission drift, because also I think it's probably when you're really in an innovative frontier kind of ministry that you have those things in place so that you can show supporters and denominations and overseers, whoever they may be, that yes, we are doing the ministry. We're not just hanging out playing games, because without them being present, their image is going to be different than the reality on the ground. They're not going to necessarily see and understand what it is that God is doing in the space unless you're able to share with them, here's our mission and here's how we're fulfilling it.
Totally.
So that's really good. I love those thoughts. I'm trying to think of what's one of the ones that we've done. I can't think of the name of it. Well, if it comes to me, but it's an audit that you do that's got 4 different categories, and I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, we've done those before with the Church.digital, trying to think through what are we doing well? Are we meeting our mission? Are we meeting our vision? Are we doing those things? Are we shifting? Do we need to move in a different direction? The constant evaluation, I think, really helps us stay focused on the people we're trying to reach. Not to put it in business language, but the customer, that we're trying to reach needs to be at the forefront. And for us, it's in ministry, the people that we're evangelizing to, the people that we are discipling, that is our customer, so to speak, that we want to be doing everything we need to for them.
I think it's crucial. I mean, whenever we name it that we're a church for nerds, geeks, and gamers, we're all at once being inclusive without trying to be exclusive. So we're trying to name exactly what are the profiles of people that we want to make sure we're focused on without it becoming like a catering thing. And so that was the structure, was like we wanted to make sure that we can be a church that nerds, geeks, and gamers feel welcome, rather than making sure that we're a church that nerds, geeks, and gamers feel like they've been like catered to, or maybe even like, infantilized. We didn't want to ever do that. So that was crucial to figuring out that mission and how do we reach that specific demographic in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and that's where the knowing the culture, being part of the culture, makes it easier to reach the culture, because you're not condescending to them and saying, like, and I'm not picking on any church that does this, but hey, let's have a game night at our church. Let's set up all of the Xboxes and let's set up everything else that we can, and then invite people in to do that. And then we're going to hit them with a gospel message before they get to start. Like, it's learning and building the relationships and allowing for those things to happen naturally instead of bait and switch people.
Totally. Crucial.
Well, then, as we are thinking about what you've been doing, what have been some really blessed experiences that you've had, either with people in the community, on Twitch, or just as you've been building this church? What are 2 or 3 stories of where God has just showed up in some pretty good ways to be able to say, wow, this absolutely was God in this person's life or in our community?
Yeah, I've written about a couple of these moments. One that has always stood out to me is just realizing the capacity of the Spirit to move in like mundane moments, in like the unexciting moments. That's nothing new. Like I didn't, that's always been the case in any kind of form of ministry. You always find that like there are things that happen in the quiet. It's the reason that I think that we like casual tasks like fishing so much, or going camping. Like we just enjoy these things because we find the Spirit in the stillness and the still small voice, right? But I didn't realize that still small voice included like cozy games. And so I'll never forget, there was a moment in I think our first or second year streaming, whenever we were playing Pokemon, it was the re-releases of Diamond and Pearl for the Switch.
Okay.
And we were playing through those games, and I was catching like a Geodude or something in the grass. And one of the members that was there at that time, just like out of nowhere, we made some kind of comment. I think it was about like, what's a cocktail that you like, that randomly came up. I don't know why that happened in the church stream, but sometimes those conversations just happen. And so we were like randomly talking about that. And then somebody shared, they were like, I don't drink. And I was like, hey, totally cool. Completely reasonable thing to not do. And then they shared why, and that there was this connection with, their sister, and this story that was evocative within them, that tied to this very personal, very meaningful part of their life that they were willing to share with us across a chat. And so it's like, in the midst of this moment, in the midst of this like literally catching a Geodude, somebody was willing to pour their heart out, was willing to share a part of themselves, and we were able to connect in a really meaningful way. So that's one that I will always think back on. Another pretty pivotal moment, we were playing a game called Oneshot, which the second time I'm name dropping Jate here, was a game that Jate recommended to me because he knows the kind of games that I play, and Oneshot is way up my alley. We were playing Oneshot, and there was a guy that, I don't know if you know this game. The concept is you're this little like cat-like, or you're controlling this cat-like creature named Nico, who's this little fella who has been tasked with delivering the light of the world, little on the nose, to replace the light of the world that has gone out. And so you are like, it's constantly self-referencing like the player as like God, and Nico as the Messiah. Like it uses this language very explicitly. And this game has a cult following. Like I had never even heard of it, but it has a deep cult following. And whenever we streamed it, we had people hop on that just like are on Twitch with this game tagged, so that anytime somebody goes live with this game, they are in the chat. And so we had Sky, who was a member of this community that just always loved to tune in to One-Shot streams. And they tuned into ours just to be our cheerleader, to be our encourager, to be somebody that was there for hints if we needed them, and that kind of thing. And what struck me about that, whenever I was reflecting upon, like, hey, that's a really cool thing to do, first off. But the second cool thing about it was, like, they didn't expect a church to probably be doing this, but they were a part of our little church community for those couple of streams while we played through that game. They were being told whether they ever show up again in our Discord server, whether they ever hung out or became a member of our church, whether any of that ever happened, we still got to welcome them into our community. And it's integral to what we do at Checkpoint. We've done this ever since we very first started, since our very first stream. We end everything with the same sign off, so that even if somebody only tunes in for that one stream, I guess presuming that they make it to the end, they get to hear that we believe 3 things to be true about them, no matter who they are, where they've been, what they've done, whether they believe in God, don't believe in God, go to church, don't go to church, hate God, hate church, no matter what. We still believe these 3 things to be true. Say that God loves you, really love you. We love you. We want community with you. You matter. You're a person of sacred worth. The world is a better place. Why? Because you are in it. So we say those 3 things. And so Sky, for 4 streams, whether they have ever heard anybody say those things to them before or not in a One-Shot stream, got to hear those things. And like, that is the power of video games and the things that connect us and these stories that are meaningful to us that lead us to checking to see whenever somebody streams them and then tuning in and hanging out with them. Like, that's just powerful. That's just cool stuff. That's things that are totally out of our hands, that are nobody that I grew up with in the church has any idea those kind of things are even happening. Right. But the capacity to reach people in that way. And then the third one, I think, is less of a story in particular and more of like a moment that happens pretty often. I mentioned a little bit earlier, kind of my snide comment about we launched with Bible studies. I love the game Undertale. And so I wanted to do a Bible study on Undertale. So whenever we very first started, we would do a Twitch stream on Wednesday nights, and we would play through an hour and a half of a game. And then I would send them off with a invite link to a Zoom call. And I would say, come join us on Sundays to talk about what we've learned tonight. It didn't work. First of all, Wednesday to Sunday is way too long. Second off, nobody wanted to join a Zoom call after just hanging out and talking about Undertale. And so we had to pivot pretty quickly and learn that. But once we built out our Discord, I realized that maybe Zoom was just not right for these folks in general. Maybe Discord was a different place, because we did have a ton of people that would join us on voice calls on Discord. So we started to do that. We started to offer more times to hang out. We have lunch together. We hang out on Sunday nights, all that kind of stuff. And I've noticed that there is this like tangible moment where that you've made a connection, and it happens in a Discord voice call. You can have somebody join your Discord. That's a big move. Like, somebody joining your Discord is a big thing. They are saying yes. They are saying, yes, I will join this. You can even have somebody send some messages. You can have people drop some texts into Discord. You can have people do a lot of different things, pick up roles, all that kind of stuff. But there is this one moment where that this is something actually happening, that you've actually connected with somebody on a real basis. And it's the moment during a voice call that they turn on their camera. It doesn't have to be their face.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be their face. We're nerds. We like to just show our geeky stuff. But if people are willing to like show you their latest Funko Pop and they turn on their camera to show it to you, you've made a connection. That is intimacy. Like, that is a level of relationship of somebody saying, I'm willing to just for a second let you into my world beyond the internet. And that is like huge in connecting with folks. And so that was a big moment that I always look for. I still am looking for it 7 years in, is like anybody that I know that I've seen around the Discord for a while, or that's hung out with us for a while in the Twitch chat or on YouTube. If they join a voice call and they turn on their camera, okay, something's happening here. Like, the spirit is moving. Something good is going on in this life and in this relationship. This is one to pay attention to.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. I've been having conversations recently about how do we change the matrix of what do we measure to know that we are actually doing ministry? Because measuring membership really doesn't show that anything is happening. It's only showing you a static picture of the people that show up at a certain place in a certain time, or attendance, whatever you're doing. Like, those are static things that are follow measures, not lead measures. Like, you're leading someone to Christ. You need to have measurements that are further ahead. I love this idea of what if you were to track that We had how many people turn their camera on for the first time in a Discord convo? Like, you could track that over time and be able to get these lead measures to say, hey, we're building community. We had this many people join the server, which means they're coming to check us out. We had this many people turn their cam, or this many people join. Like, those kinds of things that you can measure point to relationship building, point to that aspect that's going to allow you to get deeper in relationship and draw them further down your pathway towards being in relationship with God and with Christ and fully following. So I love that. That's a great thing I had not thought about measuring, but it's one of those things you could report to people and think about. We've got a step closer towards Jesus, and then you might say, this doesn't feel like a step towards Jesus. It is, because we're followers of Christ, and if they're in relationship with us, Jesus is going to rub off on them.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned metrics. We care a lot about metrics in a denominational system, and it always cracks me up because every January we are required to turn in all of our metrics into the big capital UMC.
Yep.
And I get a message every year. Every single year they reach out to me and they're like, your numbers are not correct. And I'm like, my numbers are correct. You're not asking the right questions. I was like, we look like we're one of the biggest churches in the world. And I'm like, we're not. You're just not asking the right things. The obsession with views and that kind of stuff, it's like, those are so easy to get. Those are not the thing that you should be tracking. Like, actual people, I'm so much more proud of like every person that joins our Discord server over somebody that watches a YouTube video. I love our YouTube audience. I love folks that find us, but like these are not the same thing. And for some reason, the metrics that have been tracked for the online church since COVID have been views, and then a multiplier on top of that, because what if two people are sitting in the same room watching?
Right.
I'm like, you're missing it. You're completely missing it. So yeah, it is definitely something that grinds my gears.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm trying to have those. My denomination's going through restructuring our whole system of how we have 4 levels of assembly, your local church, your regional group, your larger group, and then the national. And we're combining the 2 middle ones into one and going, how do we change all of this? What are we doing? How does it work? What's our new path forward? So we've been having those conversations of what do we measure? And I'm trying to push them as much as I can around quit measuring butts in the seat and quit measuring the offering that's given, because neither one of those show life change, and neither one of those show as people as being disciples. So the Church Digital, we often talk about intentional spiritual conversations. And we use spiritual, not gospel conversations, because a spiritual conversation can meet somebody where they are and might be a pre-evangelism, but it's an intentional conversation that we're going to meet them and have a spiritual conversation, not a conversation about the weather or sports or gaming. We're going to be talking about, what's going on in life. What are they struggling with? What does God or the Bible or Christ or my experience help inform them of what they could be doing? So that's a harder measure to track, because you can't just show up on a Sunday and see it happen. It happened Monday through Friday. And if you don't record it Monday through Friday, you might have had 5 of them, but by the end of the month, you don't know how many you had because you've forgotten. So
right.
Those are some of the things that we're trying to figure out. So I love that. Like, you just were given one, and I'm like, my brain was like spot on. Like, oh, there's a thing that could point to actual gospel taking place by a small step. And I'm really trying to dig into how do we put more steps in place than the big thing that we're going to. I was just trying to think of an example of this. Like, for instance, if you've done laundry before, you could come over to my house and you could do the laundry, but you still might need some instructions to tell you where the laundry baskets are. You might need some instructions to tell you how many bathrooms and how many towels are hanging up, and to take the towels off the floor and leave the ones hanging, or whatever system I use. You might need to know what detergent I have, but I could also lay out all of those steps in a smaller capacity than just say, hey, come over and do my laundry. I might need to say, well, when you show up, do this, do this, do this. So how do I keep breaking it down? Now, me, on the other hand, in my life, I just want the task of laundry. I'll figure it all out. But I'm realizing other people need all of those things. Collect all the laundry, sort all the laundry, do 1 load of laundry, put it in the dryer, take it out and hang it, take it out and fold it. Like, to me, like, that's way too much information. But if all I'm doing is giving you the one next step, hey, Go collect all the dirty towels. Great, I can go do that. It's not overwhelming for people to take one more step closer so that whatever we're inviting them to participate in, they're more inclined to say yes to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm currently, like I said, I'm always wrestling with metrics and what matters and what's worth keeping track of. And I'm also now throwing another kink into the system. I'm reading The Score by C.T. Wang right now. And it is all about, so that this is the same guy that wrote the Games as Agency book a couple of years ago. And his whole argument in this book is, hey, I'm noticing that in games, metrics, scorekeeping are really helpful. And in life, metrics and scorekeeping are really bad. What's going on there? Like, what's the deal? Why are these two things so dissonant? Why in gaming are these things that inspire and create and lift up? Whereas in real life, these are things that divide and are either untrackable or are harsh. And so I'm wrestling with it all over again, trying to figure out how do we differentiate between scorekeeping, gatekeeping, kind of like goal defending versus a real celebratory measure, or things that are trackable in a way that inspire. This is a big part of like narrative budgets too, and that kind of thing of like, instead of just telling people about where your budget is at, tell them about who you're impacting. Like those are so integral to the church world, but it's hard to do. So it's a fascinating thing for sure.
Yeah. I'm constantly like trying to think through those aspects of it. I like some of those thoughts there of the narrative budget. Here's what the money is going to. Nobody gets excited about giving to turn the lights on. You know, nobody is going, well, I've got to give to Checkpoint Church to make sure the internet is up and running. And, you know, how many gigs are you running? Well, let's up that. I want to give so you can give more gigs. You know, like, that's not the natural thing that people are thinking about. But when you have stories of impact, that this person's life was impacted, we were able to do this with the funding, people are more inclined to give when there is some emotion that's connected with it. Turning the lights on, there's no emotion that I'm excited about when oh yeah, the electricity's here. If it's the electricity's out, we're helping somebody who doesn't have any, now I might get emotionally invested in helping them get it turned back on. But the maintaining is not always the exciting thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'm going to shift and go a little bit different direction than we kind of do here on the podcast, because I've just recently did the first podcast with a book author and interviewed Peyton Jones, who has Discipleology. So this podcast will come out after that. That one came out actually yesterday, so this one will come out in a couple of weeks. But thinking through writing, you just had a book out, and your, focus is on... Yeah, there we go. Yeah. God and the Machine, Navigating Faith in the Age of AI, which I think is incredibly timely. Like, I think I first got introduced to some of the stuff with AI about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, well, this is fascinating. But I was really skeptical to jump on board because I'm not a pioneer in space. I'm usually an early adopter, and it felt too early to adopt because things were going to change so often that it was like, I'm not ready to jump on the bandwagon of being on a constant, revolving learning curve of things. But in the last 6 months, probably the last 12 months, I have been ramping up my AI and where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I love that you're on that cutting edge because I think it helps us think through things. So what exactly are you trying to address with your book so that if we're going to go say, oh, yeah, that's totally what I'm wrestling with right now with AI, that we can say, here's a great recommendation for you if you want to dive into exploring what AI is, what it's not, and what we should as a church do.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, and it sounds like we probably started in similar places. I do consider myself more of a pioneer than an early adopter. I think that especially when it comes to technology, like I'm a big proponent of it. I like to explore it. And whenever we first had that GPT launch that went live to the public, I recall jumping in with both feet first and really experimenting and exploring and creating a lot of really awful looking images, just stuff that was absolute like garbage to look at, but really exploring everything. I remember in our early stream days, I would do a lot of the AI like voices. And so with one of our podcasts that we did, every time we would introduce it with a different like Hanna-Barbera cartoon character saying, welcome to the Checkpoint Church podcast. So like, I was on board. I was super curious, and then I felt like I really got a pretty unexpected rug pull because I was exploring it. I was curious about it, and then the community that I serve, these people that are nerds, geeks, and gamers are often very creative. They're often people that work in the industry, in the games industry in particular, and that kind of thing. And they hate AI. They really, really strongly hate it, and they would notice if I would use it, and they would be upset. And so I wanted to wrap my mind around that because I'm always less of a proponent of AI than I am of people.
Yep.
I'm always more interested in what's going on with the humans behind this thing. In the UMC, we have this kind of general rule that we've adopted from John Wesley: to do no harm, to do good, to attend upon the ordinances of God. Which we changed the third one in our community to strive to grow, because that's maybe a little bit more modern English. But like, do no harm, it seems to me like the people that I was seeing, the people I was connecting with, the pastors that were going 2 feet first, like I had been into AI, were maybe going too far, and they were not really considering the harm that was being done. And so I was asked to write this book by our publishing house because I had written a lot on AI, and I'd written a lot on my Substack, Pixel and Pulpit. I'd written a lot of negative things, not necessarily coming after it as if I was like a hater, as if I was like telling you that for even pursuing the technology, you should feel bad about yourself. But instead, I felt like I was the only voice that was drawing out like the people that were being harmed by this thing. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you're just not a real artist if you create, AI art." There was always this kind of like judgmental abrasiveness, and I was like, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but I'm more concerned about the pastor. I'm more concerned about the person that the pastor is serving. And so, like, what are we doing if we're so enamored by this thing that we're making AI Jesus on Twitch? What are we doing that we're so obsessed with this thing that that we're no longer caring about our work to serve a community, and we're more interested in how we can be more productive? That we're giving into those kind of things. And so, for me, I approach this book with that angle. I don't think that AI is the boogeyman. I don't think that AI has the capacity to be the boogeyman. It's a tool. On the other hand, I don't think AI is the second coming of Christ. I don't think that AI is going to be some miraculous game changer that is going to bring about some kind of perfection through it. And so I wanted to present the book that says, I just want to present you with an honest theology of AI that is neither going to glamorize it. I'm not going to tell you to incorporate it into your life, nor am I going to demonize it and tell you that it's the satanic panic 3.0. I'm not going to do either one of those things. Instead, I'm going to approach this with a pastoral lens of how can we address this thing. And so that's the angle that I write this book from. It's less of a practical guide and more of a theological exploration. And so it's designed as a Bible study. It's a 6-week Bible study. It has a accompanying Bible study if your church ever wants to pursue it. Anybody out there listening, that's the purpose of it. Is it was written with church leaders, church members, people who care in mind, to be able to incorporate it into their Bible studies, go through it, and just talk about it, to address the concerns, address the questions. And so I'm going to talk about the history of technology in general, how the church has used it historically, kind of like Bats has named in the chat. Probably the biggest swing I think that I really make is I am staunchly anti-anthropomorphizing AI. I think that is our biggest, like, the church has got to be a clear leader on this and acknowledge that, like, AI cannot, will not, is incapable of bearing the imago Dei. It cannot be an image bearer. It is not a human being. It is a tool. It is a technology. It would be as ridiculous as saying that the gold that was on the Ark of the Covenant is what was important instead of the hands that were blessed to form it, right? Like, there is something happening in humanity that is different than what is happening in AI. And so that was a thing that I pretty staunchly put down there. And then a major through line of this one is going to be on the like anti-AI side. Are we considering the people behind that? Or are we just like looking at their arguments and their rage bait and the stuff that they post online? Or are we actually seeing, no, this is a hurting person. We need to care about the hurting person here. And then on the other end of that spectrum, the people that are so pro AI, are we losing even more trust that we have in one another? And so the rooted nature here is I bring back to like this concern over AI in schools. And in particular, the like post-primary, post-secondary education kind of stuff. And I felt like I've seen so so much of an instant reaction of like, you used AI instead of, again, like a natural trust of a like, if you did, would you tell me? Will you agree to not? Will we set up a relationship of trust instead of this really weird reactionary thing that is happening? I think we are just further eroding trust on this end of the spectrum. And so again, that's really what I was approaching this book with was I'm not really trying to be a source of catastrophizing. I'm not really trying to be a source of utilizing. I'm trying to be a source of providing hope and kind of pastoral guidance into whatever AI and technology looks like in this era.
Well, I will say, I hope this is a blessing to churches that choose to do this, because one of the things that I am hearing, for the most part, because I'm not serving in a local church, but I'm hearing people talking about the AI conversation just is not happening. There's no doubt that people in the pews are using AI. There's no doubt that people on staff are using AI. So if your church is not addressing it, how do you know that you're within bounds of a set policy that you would want to follow if you haven't had conversations around it? So Kenny Chang, who was at NCMS, he was talking about some of this as well. And one of the things he said is, if you want to spur conversation, start with, do we have an AI policy? And you'll find out who's using AI. So start with, say, let's have a policy. It doesn't mean you have to resolve everything, but start with something to bring it together and make decisions around it. The thing I've been doing since I've been using it is treating AI as like an intern. I give it a task, it goes and does it. I check the work. I ask it to do more. I check the work. I'm constantly the supervisor of the AI. And I've got to, I think, maintain that, because I don't have enough trust in it that it's always going to get everything right. So I want to be that bookend bookkeeper for it. But I also know that if I'm using something in the church, if I'm using something to create, I want to let people know, yes, I used AI in this. I think, like you're saying, is I don't want people to find out later and be upset about it because they felt I was being dishonest, putting something off as my own work. So I do think that's an important piece to be able to bring into that conversation and have that.
Well, and I think that the policy statement about Kenny, I included that in my book as well, because I think that's a crucial step, is building out a policy. Just asking the questions, just having the conversation is a huge deal. And I imagine you would probably be surprised, or at least I've been surprised in churches that I've heard using it so far, the people that show up that do know about it. That are just like, I just thought we weren't ever going to talk about it in this space. Like there are people that are really hungry to have a spiritual exploration of this thing because they're hearing about it, they're seeing it in work. Some of them are being forced to use it in work. And so I think that just being there to answer questions, being there to bounce ideas off of, and just to hear out is crucial. And you noted something that I really want to highlight, which is one of my policy recommendations that is an unquestionable one for me, that is like a shoe in, you must have this, is transparency. If you are not being transparent about using AI, if there is guilt there, hey, that might be a spiritual gut check. I'm not going to go so far as to say what is not sinful in regards to AI, but if the spirit is a knocking, there might be something going on there. If you're feeling some guilt for using something and you don't want to be transparent about it, that's a concern. That's not a good sign. As a pastor, if a parishioner came up to me and expressed that to me, I'd be like, we need to talk about why. We need to express what's going on. And so one of my things, I'm very transparent about this. I have used AI to generate images and video. I will never do that again. I have set a line in the sand for myself. I'm not doing that anymore. I think that it is for my own purposes, from my own research, for the work that I've done, for the people that I care for. It would do too much harm for them to say for them to see that I used an image. That would cause too much harm to them as a person. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to lay that line in the sand. I'm not forcing anybody to lay that line, but I do think that you need to at least be transparent if you did or did not. And then also doing the due diligence to research what is being done, what are people talking about. You should probably at least know the name Sam Altman. You should have an idea of the things that he is saying. You should know some of the stuff that is going on by the biggest companies out there. But again, the troublesome part is one of the big retorts from people that are very pro AI is like, well, look, we've all been using technology. Do you make it act like Facebook is some kind of guilt-free system, but I'm still on there. I'm still using my phone. I'm still buying stuff that was made inequitably. And so there's always these like underlying realities, and we can choose to like be reactionary to those, or we can choose to hear those and to say like, yes, we should be talking about that. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't. Instead, it's just another thing that maybe we should be bringing up more often.
Well, yeah, and it was typed in the chat. I think Trombone had put it in there in regards to data centers and water usage and electricity usage and those kinds of things. And I happen to live in a state where that has been the news for the last 6 months. Is Microsoft owns this property, and they're considering an application to be able to make a data center. The town down the road, someone else is considering making a data center. And like, we really are concerned about our water. We really are concerned about our environment. I live in Michigan, so if I mention the name Flint, everybody knows the water problem of Flint. Like, it's not hidden. It's a horrible mistake that happened with, and you can go look it up if you don't know. But also, the town that I live in, they had a chemical company in the town out by the lake, so outside the city limits. And everybody who lives outside the city limits, after the chemical plant closed down and did everything that they did in there, they had to pay in order to have city water run to all of these residents outside the city, because they contaminated the groundwater source so bad that nobody can use their own water that's underneath the ground there. And it's like, we're really concerned about those things, and I think we should have those conversations. I don't think we need to be naive, and I think we just need to have wisdom around how they're doing things, and make sure, like, there's too often we just let people go ahead without saying, hey, how are you going to guarantee you're not going to ruin the environment? If we don't have the conversations and we let just people go forward, I mean, I could go even further back, where I live by where National Forest is. There was lots of tree harvesting that took place. So lumber mills were the predecessor of the problems in the area before we had chemical plants that were the predecessor. Now we're wondering about if data centers are going to be. So I'm not an alarmist, but I certainly care about my neighbors, and I certainly care about
Absolutely.
the animals and the creation that God has given us. So I want those conversations. I'm not necessarily the one smart enough to answer those questions, but I want to be honest enough to say we should have conversations around those things. There's a bigger picture, planet-wise, community-wise thing, but we also boil that down to, what is AI? Like, I like you brought in the aspect of school, because I don't have kids in school. I'm not thinking about what is AI doing to elementary kids or middle school kids. I'm not thinking about that. I mean, maybe the most I'm thinking about is people using ChatGPT to write their test answers or papers, right, and not actually doing the work. I've heard that, but I don't know what other concerns there are for younger people dealing with AI.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, for me, again, it's rooted in trust. And so I think that we're just seeing this utter deterioration. I have my own high horse that I could get on about Jonathan Haidt's research with phones in schools, but there is this boogeyman nature that we want to attribute to technology, and to the people that use it, and to the kids now that are using it. We're attributing them with a boogeyman nature. We're saying they too incapable of controlling themselves, or something along those lines. And instead of either building that trust, building that respect, creating those relationships, those boundaries, I don't know. It seems to me like we're trying to legalize away what is a justice issue, what is a relationship issue, what is a community issue. We're so much more interested in like putting the ban hammer on things rather than like engaging honestly with them. And that concerns me. I think that there are things that can be done on the legalistic side. I know Bats mentioned one there for moratoria on like data centers. Like that's something that on the legal side can be done to slow down, to halt, to figure out. But on our end, like on our human to human end, I'm so much more interested in us offering grace upon grace to other people, rather than allowing ourselves to become captive to this mindset of negativity around this thing, rather than just entering into an honest conversation about it. And so that's what I was hoping to offer in there. And a word that I will offer up to anybody that is considering this. If AI is a tool A tool that is based out of knowledge for me is technology. The definition that I have for technology is knowledge put into practice. So if that is what we're doing here, this is a tool. What is the relationship between humanity and tools? In my theological comprehension, we are stewards of tools. What does that mean? What does it mean for the church to steward AI well? It doesn't necessarily mean for us to say you can never use it on anything ever, but it also doesn't mean that you should be using it on everything ever. It means that we should be directing it. We should be guiding it. We should be in the conversation. We should be lifting up voices like a Kenny Jang, who is very much somebody pro AI, and we should be lifting up the voices that are more cynical, that are also saying maybe this isn't the way. We need to be lifting up both voices, so especially in Christian spaces, so that we can pursue what is a theological justice view of what's going on here. What is an ethical stewardship of these things? What can we lay? What can't we lay? How can we figure this out and move forward in effective relational means, which is what we're best at. That's what we're supposed to.
I love that you brought in relationship with that, because that's one of the things that, like, school boards and governments have for years done this. Well, we can't actually figure out how to do this, so let's put zero tolerance policies in place. So the kid that brings a butter knife to school in kindergarten for his peanut butter sandwich, forgot it was in there, gets kicked out of school for having a knife. I mean, because you set such harsh standard rules, because you can't use grace and relationship to say, hey, probably not the best idea to bring that to school. We know you meant no harm, but please don't do it again. Like, you can have intentional conversations with that, but it's like we at some point have gotten in society too confrontational, and parents justifying their kids that we have to set harsher rules and penalties in order to actually be able to implement discipline sometimes within a system, because we're not treating people as people. We're treating people as numbers at times. I'll just go on a pet peeve of mine for a minute here. When you go to a restaurant, and I don't mean like, you know, a waiter coming to your table asking your name. I mean, when you're ordering fast food and they ask you for your name, they have just turned your name into a number, okay? They are not treating you with that name. You're not building relationship. They are just calling out your name, at least for me. They're mispronouncing my name. I don't know that they've called me because they said my name so poorly. They didn't build any relationship with me. I know the intent is to do that, but you've given the task to someone who's not building relationship. They're a task person. They aren't building relationship. The only way to build relationship is to repeatedly see me in the space and then be curious about my name, then ask me about my name, and then invest in me. But I saw this happening to me, and it bugged me so much. I give a number. I don't give my name. I give a number. And what's so cool about this is actually giving a number has developed relationship with people, because they're like, oh, whoa, okay, that's it. Now they're curious. Now they actually want to engage me. I give a name. They don't care. I give a number. Now they're curious. Now I've opened up a place for conversation. And actually, a couple of places, they got so excited when 22 is the number I use. My son started using it too. I go walk in, they go, hey, 22, how you doing? Like, it became who I was and relationship with them because I built it with them. But if they just had my name and they mispronounced it and they go on to the next person, there's no relationship. So I love that aspect that we too often are abandoning relationship for the sake of ease, for the sake of comfort, for the sake of order, for the sake of whatever it is. So if we don't have relationship with people and AI is replacing it, there's a negative thing. If we can't have relationship with people and talk about AI, there's also another issue going on there. So I love to bring in the relationship aspect there, man.
That was something that I named directly in the book. At the time of writing, there was this real conundrum of people. There was like a study done. I don't remember where it was from. If I remembered, I would link it. But there was some kind of study that was done revealing that AI was shown to come across as more empathetic than real people in like digital chats back and forth. And so people were done they did a blind test where they were messaging either a bot or a real person. And AI dramatically was seen as being more empathetic. And the article was trying to reveal, like, isn't that interesting? AI is so empathetic. But for me, I was like, no, we failed. Like we
Exactly.
dropped the ball.
Right.
We shouldn't be blaming AI here and saying like they're making it too nice. We are the ones that need to be more empathetic. Like this is a sign upon us of what we're doing, of how we're forming relationships, of how we're connecting. We're putting way too much of the guilt and also the success of AI on something that doesn't actually exist, that is simply a tool. And instead, we need to be so much more concerned with like the things that are being revealed. How can we steward them into a forward?
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to kind of maybe land this in being stewards of what we have. Like whatever tool we have, we want to be stewards of it. God has created us. We talked about being in the image of God. Well, we being in the image of God, God created everything. So we are also little creators. We are using what God has given us as the tools we have to grow, create, and make our lives hopefully easier at times. And also, like the things that get me excited where AI is going is in the medical field with the assessment of data that it's going to be able to spot. And I've seen a few examples of it, like you're putting in a screening and it can see way far in advance that something, because it's looked at thousands upon thousands of similar scans. Hey, that little dot right there, this maybe already showing up way earlier than we've ever been able to be detected. Or it can look at your, and I know this is a little creepy, but it can look at all the things you were ordering on Amazon and predict that you're pregnant before you even know you're pregnant.
Right.
You know, there's a little bit that's scary, but there's a little bit that's like, wow, when it can help us figure out health concerns and things that are going to go undiagnosed because of human frailty, but we can use a tool to help us, which is what all of the scanning is. It's trying to help us. So if we've got something else that can read it better, have more experience and more input to be able to do it, I get excited about things like that hopefully we can help people who are struggling, suffering, and have diseases be healed.
Yeah, I hope I didn't come down too harshly. I think that's always the like dangerous tilt back and forth is depending on my mood that day or the articles that I might have read most recently in the New Yorker or whatever. Like I may come down harsher on AI than I mean to. But I do want to say like the core thesis of the book, as I mentioned, is neither positive nor negative.
Right,
it's trying to present a theological framework. And I hope that would be beneficial to whether you consider yourself to be somebody that is like totally staunchly against it or totally staunchly for it. See this as a tool itself, like the book, the ideas themselves are tools for you to engage with, agree with, disagree with, but regardless, just take seriously so that you can take steps towards stewarding better.
Oh yeah. And just the same way a tool can be used for good, a tool can be used for harm. So in the same way, there are probably, you know, I don't want to give ideas out there, but there are probably companies trying to figure out how they can exploit all of those things of, hey, we know this is what you're going through, and we can point you and push you towards a product that maybe helps, maybe doesn't help, as opposed to being in relationship and saying, I want to come alongside of you. So, no, I felt like in this conversation, it sounds like you are walking that middle ground. You are trying to be intentional about, let's not just rush into it, say everything's good. Let's also not bury our heads in the sand and say the world is coming apart. It's just the newest thing that we're living through. And how do we do this well? How do we represent Christ well in the middle of finding those steps? And instead of being a silent voice, the church has a voice. So let's speak about the things that, hey, how do we theologically wrestle with this? Hey, how do we keep relationship with people and not degrade one another with something that's new as far as technology goes? So having not read the book, but just hearing the conversation and quickly looking at and seeing some of the posts that you put out before, I appreciate where you're coming from.
Oh, good. I'm glad that comes across. And if anybody does decide to check it out, do let me know, because I'm always looking for thoughts and willing to engage the conversation with you and your church if that's something that's interesting to you. And if you want to keep the conversation going further, there is always Substack and Pixel and Pulpit, and glad to do those.
Yeah. Well, that was just kind of fun, timely that your book coming out and highlighting that. Do you have any other innovative things that you are looking to be doing within the church or yourself in this next year?
Oh, always. We are innovative through and through. I know whenever we started the conversation, you talked about the adaptability piece of like going from a Comic-Con church to a Twitch church overnight. And like that is something that I consider myself to be one of my strengths. I'm an ideator. I'm an adapter. I like thinking through new things and trying out new things. Our most recent experiment that I'm pretty proud of is this concept called the Pixel Pilgrimage. So we're probably about a year into trying out this experiment. We've done, I think, 5 of them at this point. I've streamed for years. I've played a lot of games. I mentioned a little bit earlier about the games that I really like. I'm a big fan of very narrative, like strong story games, often sometimes twisted, maybe a little bit. I like psychological horror type games. I like games that maybe surprise you or do something unexpected. And so often our streams in the OG days would take that turn where I would, have a couple streams where we might play something like a Mario Kart or something with a group. And then we would take a series of streams and we would just play through a game entirely from beginning to end on stream, just to experience it together, experience the story. And that was always my favorite. Like, I liked those streams the most. And so we took a hiatus from streaming back in 2024, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do next? How do we want to experiment next? And I was listening to a podcast at the time called Radical Sacred, and they were doing a season where their theme for that season was on pilgrimages. And I was learning about like all of these, historic and classical and new and innovative forms of pilgrimage, and in which people would go typically on a spiritual journey to a holy place. And so they might go to some specific ancient monument or church or structure or something, and they would start at one place, and then they would walk, or they would travel in some way, shape, or form to the end destination. And it would be the journey along the way that was so impactful to get them to that eventual destination, to experience the divine from beginning to end. And I kind of reflected on one of the podcasts in particular that struck me, where they had provided a framework of how they would send people on modern pilgrimages to various places. And so during the pilgrimage, they would ask people to reflect in their journals periodically throughout the journey. What are you noticing? What are you avoiding? What's missing from this place? And what's delighting you? I was like, those are great questions.
Yeah, they are.
And also, those questions can be answered about a game. I was like, interesting. I wonder, can somebody take a pilgrimage into a video game? And I was like, we need to try it. Like, let's at least give it the old college try. Let's see what happens. Can we explore those 4 questions as we are experiencing a video game together? If you consider a video game to be like an artistic experience that you start and then you reach a destination, which is the credits, which is the end of the pinnacle of the moment of the experience. The point has been the journey along the way. So like, can we do that? And so we picked a game called Neva, which is a sequel to a game called Greece, or not a sequel, but the second game from the developers of Greece, which I already knew was a particularly evocative game about mental health. And so I was like, okay, Neva seems interesting. Let's give it a try. I was nervous. I was anxious. I was like, boy, like what am I going to do with this? Is this going to go well? Is this going to be a complete flop? Am I going to be eating crow? But along the way, we pushed forward. We're like, we're going to answer these questions. Do these questions feel right? Yes, they feel right. How else can we structure it? What else can we do? When can we do it? What's a short enough game? Neva's a short enough game. Seems to be strong in its narrative. Let's do it. So we started this experience, and we entered into it together with I had a journal on my desk, and I would open up the journal and I would encourage the people that were in the chat to start with me by bringing expectations, which is also a pretty common pilgrimage practice. So I was like, what are you expecting to get on this journey? And I encouraged them to like write down apprehension. Like, this is weird. What we're doing is weird. So like, acknowledge that this may not work. I think if we acknowledge that, then maybe it'll make it more likely to work if we just get that out of the way. And so I encouraged that kind of feedback. And then we went into the game, we played this game, and at about 30 minutes into the game, I planned to pause every 30 minutes anyway, but at about 30 minutes into the game, we reach our first save point. And the save point in the game Neva is a stack of stones called a cairn. If you're not familiar with pilgrimages, on a pilgrimage, typically one of the stopping places or the kind of milestones that you'll set is symbolized by a cairn. So I was like, okay, I got it. I got the image. Thank you. Like, I understand the Holy Spirit is in this. There is something happening. I don't know where this idea came from, but clearly it is doing something. There is something deeper than just my desire to play video games in this moment. Like there's a connection with the divine. There's a connection with the story being told through this art. Let's keep going. And we went through it, and it was just this exceptional experience. We had one of our folks that tuned along with us express in the chat that they were working through loss that they hadn't had a chance to process from a year or so prior, that the game like invited them into because we were playing it so slowly, because we were allowing it to have like time to process within us. So they were able to work through something. And when it ended, the folks that had tuned in were like, all right, when's the next one? Like, this was fantastic. When's the next pilgrimage? And so since then, we've walked through several games together. So we played Neva, we've played Everhood, we've played the Beginner's Guide, we have played Many Nights of Whisper, which was a wild experience. That was one that was absolutely bonkers. You are a person who has been tasked with shooting this like ethereal arrow made of stars into a chalice across the ocean. And it is made up of everyone in your village's wishes. If you make it into the chalice, the wishes come true. If you miss, then none of the wishes come true. And so it's like, okay, so the journey is hearing all of these wishes, preparing to make the shot, and then the final night happens. And you either make it or you don't. And I won't spoil it for anybody that wants to go watch our pilgrimage. But
wow, on some level, that sounds like a horrific game to me. Of do all of this work, and I'm just going to say it this way. It's a coin flip on whether you win or you lose. And I know it's not that exactly, but it's like, oh, that would just keep me from not wanting to ever start that game.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's quite an experience. So yeah, it's things like this, but we've made this into something that I think is really unique and poignant for.
Oh yeah, I've not heard of
at least
anyone doing that. That is really, really cool. And I love taking those questions and thinking about it as a journey. What it reminds me of, this may not resonate with anybody if you've never done this, is what's called outdoor adventure therapy. So you go to high ropes courses, you do obstacle courses, and I did this when I was a teacher, so I had training in it. We went out to certain places, and you're climbing a rock wall, and what you're doing is naming something that you're really fearful, naming a struggle in your life. And that next rock, when you let them go, and then when they get to a struggle, you give them an actual struggle in their life, and you watch them overcome physically the struggle right in front of them, and overcoming that struggle physically opens them up to really facing the struggle that they're facing, in life. It's really powerful. So this reminds me kind of that way when you're saying is, hey, these people were journeying through us. Hey, we're struggling with grief. Hey, we're going slow. We're intentionally asking these questions and using the video game as a thing to inform us about what's happening in our own lives. And as kind of that same kind of idea. I love that, dude. That is super cool idea there. Really fun. How does it resonate with people that, hey, you're coming along in the journey, we've been playing for 12, 15, 20 hours already in the game, and now I come in and I find out you're doing it. How do they feel, and how do you welcome those people in?
Yeah, that's been one of the interesting things. So the games I mentioned, Neva, we were able to complete in 2 playthroughs. So it's like a 6-hour game. And so it was relatively like the same crew throughout.
Okay.
Everhood, I think, was longer, like a 10 to 12-hour game. And that was one that was pretty tough. It was one that like we had some folks that maybe they jump in for a second and pretty quickly bounce off. But for the most part, what I've tried to do is to limit the games to as close to one stream as possible.
Okay.
Like I want to make sure that it is a thing that is super accessible to the one time that it happens live. But then I'm working on a model that will make it accessible after the fact in like 30-minute chunks. So instead of having to tune into us live and tune in for a full like 6-hour stream, being able to consume it 30 minutes at a time, answer some questions. You still have another 30 minutes, watch the next part, then answer some questions. But like essentially doing like a self-guided pilgrimage through the pilgrimages that we've already done. The experience is way different live. Like there is, I think it's maybe for some folks going to be more evocative, but I wanted to still create some level of accessibilities for folks that just can't fit that into their schedule or just are unable to join us for that. And I think there's still something to just being a part of an experience like that and taking a game that slowly. That's really, I think, been the crucial thing is like, regardless if you're there for 6 hours or if you're there for 30 minutes at a time, pausing every 30 minutes in a game is not, I mean, I am a gamer. So I might not be the best person to ask, but like, that's not my norm. I do not play a game for 30 minutes and stop. I normally play for like an hour, hour and a half. And so intentionally stopping a game after a short period of time is something that required my like muscle memory to break apart and to build something new and to be welcomed into a new experience, which I think is what makes it work.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by that. It really sounds like you've hit on something, and even to the point where potentially if someone else wanted to do this, you could just like take anybody's game playthrough if they've done the speed run, so to speak, to shorten a game that's longer, do a speed run, but split it up every so often, half hour, 20 minutes, whatever a natural break in their playthrough could be, put those questions in and use that with a group of people journeying together. Like you could modify this and not have to do all the playthrough yourself. If you aren't the playthrough person, you could still be an observer and ask those questions of somebody else's playthrough.
Yeah, and we've invited people to use the 30-minute resources that we're building in their own groups. Like take the pilgrimage that we've already done and invite a group to go on it with you, and like you be essentially like the guide, but the guide has already kind of done the work. So it allows for that to enter. And then we've had some people that have done a live one. So we had one of our level 2 members who was like, I'm doing a retreat. Can I do a pixel pilgrimage? I was like, of course. Like, yes, certainly you can do one. And so they led one in their community, and it was an impactful experience. I've thought about leading it at like a conference. I've wondered if that would be something that those outside of the gaming sphere would get something out of. Like maybe it would be a way to invite people into what gamers get out of games without having to go and like download Fortnite and figure it out.
Well, yeah, and then different genres of games may or may not really work well with trying to do a pilgrimage within.
Right.
I like to play, RPGs, turn-based as many as I can get that are like, if I have 80 hours in, I may not even be halfway through the game. So, I like a whole year-long game, and I'm just waiting for the next one to come out because I'll finish this game. There's so many games I've never finished because I've got 80 hours in and I'm not even halfway. So
that might be a pilgrimage up Everest. Yeah, that's a bit of a next level. That's only for the diehards. I have thought about shortening a game and doing just like intentional sections of it. There's a streamer that I follow. I don't know if you've heard of him, called Prof Noctis. He's an interesting fella. He is a pastor at University of Alabama who was doing like, campus ministry, and developed a relationship with one of the professors who was like, hey, you have a dissertation in you on Final Fantasy. You should write it. And so he did and wrote a dissertation on Final Fantasy 15 and is now like a doctor of Final Fantasy at University of Alabama, talking about religion in Final Fantasy. And so now he does streams where he plays through mostly Squeenix games. So it's going to be like a lot of Final Fantasies. It's going to be a lot of like, he just did the Chronicles of Ivalice Final Fantasy Tactics. That's very much his like bread and butter. But he did an experience at one point, because his games are so long, that he essentially did like hard saves in Chronicles of Ivalice and was like, I will just load up the scene for you. We won't play through the entire game because a tactics game takes forever, but I will show you the important moments in the story so that we can like do a theological breakdown of what's going on in this scene. So I've thought about that with like, I love Final Fantasy X. I would love to explore that. So maybe that would be a fun pilgrimage, but it would have to be, like I just said, very much the highlights rather than the whole thing.
Well, you could possibly just do all the cutscenes, because the cutscenes are telling the story, so you don't have to do the playthrough part necessarily. Maybe you just do the boss battles, not the individual ones, whatever, like or quest, like you have to go do a quest. You could do a quest for certain items, those kinds of things. But yeah, there's some of those games, like there are people that like just play Final Fantasy 14 or 15 and that's it. They don't play anything else. That's their world. They're deeply in there. There is, by the way, if you don't know, there is a church inside of Final Fantasy 14. So I love that aspect of things, that like, wait a minute, you can have a church inside a video game? Well, why not? You can have a church in a bar. You can have a church in a business. You can have a church in the mall. Why can't you have a church inside a video game? It's pretty fantastic to reach people that are not going to walk through the doors of the church. So why not be the church and go there? Well, I'm glad you shared about
100%.
the pilgrimages thing. We run in circles that overlap, but I don't spend all that time in your Discord, in your community over there. One of the things that I'm always a little cautious of with being a pastor is showing up at other people's churches with the name pastor in the name, and
Sure.
people thinking, hey, you're a person, tell me what's going on. And I'm like, no, this is not my church. I'm just a friend of this church. I'm a supporter of what you're doing because I believe God has called you. He's blessed you. I see the fruit of what you're doing. And so there's levels too. It's like, I love seeing what other people are doing, so I never stay put. I'm always out search for the next new person that's doing something else and figuring out what they're doing so I can learn and share from what they're doing. So I hope some people, I'm going to just say it, steal that idea from you. And
Yes, 100%.
Do some pixel pilgrimage.
Let us know. We will support it. I mean, I think it's an awesome concept, and I think it's what I want out of video games. Like I said, I'm a narrative gamer through and through, and so you probably won't catch me on the latest FPS game, but I will be playing that indie game that has the powerful story. Like that's my thing, and I found that those work really well for pilgrimages. But I support this idea, this concept of being the church for nerds, geeks, and gamers in whatever way that means. And I love to see it and love to explore it. I think that often I get kind of shoehorned in with being a digital church. And so a lot of times, especially in like UMC gatherings, they're like, here's, Nathan, and he's a part of a digital church. And I'm like, you got to say the whole thing. Like, the digital church is really just the avenue. Like I'm a pastor of a church for nerds.
Yes.
That is what we are through and through. And we believe in that and that call. And that's how we do our work. It's so much less important how we get there. And so much more important, the actual like people group that I feel called to. And that's the marginalized nerds, geeks, and gamers who just haven't been welcomed historically.
Yeah, that definitely is true. Well, with that, how about we mentioned it earlier, but we didn't dive into it in any depth. We've both been to Nerd Culture Ministry Summit for the gatherings that they've had. What is it that you are walking away from? Because just last month, or actually it was earlier this month, a couple of weeks ago, what are you walking away from there, either having something new revealed to you or something confirmed that you already knew?
I've got my notes that I took during the session. I'll see if I have a highlighted section just for you.
Okay.
So the thing that I liked the most was something that Kenny Jang said. So I went to the conference. I went to his session in particular on AI because I've written about AI. I care about AI. I wanted to see what Kenny had to say. Never had the opportunity to sit with him before. Known him for a long time, but never had the chance. So one of the quotes that I wrote down, I think this might actually be the only like word for word quote that I wrote, is in this concept of AI taking jobs, in this concept of like the church dying, of the church losing members, of the church shrinking. That's something we wouldn't know at all about in a denominational system. In this world of all of these various things going on, Kenny said this like note. So we are not in the church in the knowledge transfer business. Yeah. We are in the relationship business. And I wrote down this: if churches are being interrupted by AI, this is why. It is because churches have become knowledge transfer engines rather than relationship building engines. And like that fired me up. I was all about it. I was like, yes, I am one that likes information. I am one that like the internet is so demanding of like, what content are you putting out there that's feeding knowledge to another person? What are we doing? We have these things that we put out every other week called nerdy sermons. How good can I make our nerdy sermons to deliver knowledge into somebody's brain? What questions can I answer theologically? Not saying those things aren't important, but in an era where somebody can go to an AI and get bad answers potentially, but good answers potentially about their biggest theological concern, what is my purpose anymore? What is the call of the pastor in the midst of that? I never was called to knowledge transfer. I missed that in my calling. That was something that I took on that was not a yoke put upon me. Instead, my yoke is relationship. My yoke is the life of the church, is the order of the church. That is the crucial work. And so like that you got me preaching. Oh,
no, that's so good. And I must have probably heard that from Kenny. And it didn't like, it's like, oh yeah, I agree. I already am on board with that because like you were talking about the change with COVID. I was early, like I'm an early adopter within the church. I'm not an early adopter outside the church for tech. So, businesses using website for years. Church is not doing it, but I'm an early one in the church doing websites. Church is not, well, 10 years before COVID, I was already doing live worship online. So the world was already doing live stuff. I was just an early adopter in the church to say, hey, I've got shut-ins an hour away in 4 different directions, and I'm not making that up. Honestly, where I was living, hour away, 4 different nursing homes in 4 different directions. It's like, I can't go be with these people on a monthly basis. It is just too much driving time to build relationship with them. So we can build relationship by them feeling like they're a part of church if it's happening live versus just watch it on tape. And so early adopter in that. But then when COVID happened, I'm sitting there and I'm going, why does it matter anymore when everybody else is online? If you're sitting home, why are you going to watch me instead of go watch Craig Groeschel, instead of going watch Andy Stanley, instead of going watch, fill in the latest, greatest, biggest up-and-coming influencer in the church? And my answer was because relationship. So that was like, that's what I was always using tech to solve, was relationship. That's still why I'm using tech, is for that relationship aspect. Because if now I'm competing for views and likes, I'm in the wrong business. I've shifted, because that's what my thinking went to when I'm competing with everybody else, because everyone's online. Now I'm competing for likes and views. I need to go back to, it's all about the relationship with people and developing that and fostering that in the space, which then after that I found Twitch. It was like, oh my goodness, this is where you can foster that, as opposed to a YouTube video where you can't foster relationship very easily. Some people can do it, but the audience isn't expecting that either. So they're not looking for it there. Within Twitch, they are, and they expect it, and they want it, which I think is amazing and beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, it was the gospel that I realized I've been preaching in my coaching sessions and in helping people plant digital churches. Is one of my key ideas that I try to offer up is, who is our competition in doing online church? And I've said, the church has long been guilty of making other churches our competition, of seeing stealing flock. I grew up in the church plant world, so that was always the sentiment, was oh, that new church plant is going to steal my flock.
Right.
And that's so unhealthy. And so instead, what I said is, we're gonna have that temptation online to feel the same way of oh, I'll never get as many viewers as XYZ. I'll never do it as well as XYZ. When instead, my actual competition is Instagram, the company, is Meta. My biggest concern is, how can I get somebody to doom scroll for 5 minutes less and instead to be in meaningful community on my Discord server, or in their own communities, or whatever it means to them to be in community? How can I get them off of an algorithm and into relationship? That's our competition. And so that's what I see. It's that was words to what I've been trying to get across, is we are not in knowledge transfer. We are not just trying to be another algorithm for people to subscribe to. We are trying to be something that is replacing that algorithm. And that's if we're going to take any kind of aggressive language towards it, that should be who we are aggressive against, is these algorithmic sources that are vying for attention.
Yeah. And Supersonic asking, how do you undo something ingrained into society? And well, it's by teaching and coaching and guiding people. What's funny is you bring this up. So I often, when I go to conferences, end up chatting with whoever the sponsors are, the tables, the booths. I spend tons of time talking with those people and building relationships there. And I can't remember his name. He was there from One Child. Do you remember who was there with One Child?
Not.
Okay, maybe Mel knows. Anyway, we had a fantastic conversation where he posed this idea of retraining the algorithm. And I actually just wrote earlier this week a blog post addressing this very thing of how do you, and I think it's, I can't remember if it's 5 or 7. It might be 7 different ways in which you can retrain the algorithm, and you can teach young people how to do this. So, one is, scrolling through and spending 5 minutes not commenting on, not touching anything, and then evaluate, hey, which one of those things were a plus in your life? Which one of those things were a negative in your life? any of those things that you're following, go unlike the things that were negative. So it's retraining it by unliking it. And then there's several different suggestions like that of how to do things, or even have a sharing of, here's some positive ones that I want you to go and follow that I've found that you might enjoy. So it's taking and intentionally retraining the algorithm, and then also inviting people who are on there to create their own way of doing it. Once you teach them the thoughts of what is good, like, what were your questions again? What were you avoiding? What was good?
Avoiding, missing, delighting, noticing.
Delighting, and delighting was, yeah. So what are you delighting in? Like, hey, if you're delighting in this and you're delighting in the Lord, you should be sharing this. If you're avoiding, is this doom scrolling helping you to avoid something? You could address. So you could take those same questions that you're asking and apply that to your algorithm to retrain it, and go dislike, or intentionally take the time to go and say, I don't like this content. Do that repeatedly. Or when you find something you like, go open them up and go find 3 more things by that same person and like them also. It will teach the algorithm you like that content.
Yeah. And I would say one of the things that we've taken with us in that vein going forward was, I want to build the community, to build our Discord community in a way that if you're going to have to live a life where your phone is right next to you, if you're going to be like unlocking it before you even get out of bed, what can I do to make sure that we're the first place you go, and that you don't have too much to do? Like, I think about like Animal Crossing. This is a tangent. Animal Crossing is this game that like has a net amount of things that you can do in a day. You can find other things to do, but Animal Crossing has like a tangible end every day, and then you'd pick up the next day. And so I was like, okay, so if we're addicted to algorithms, if we're addicted to systems, what can I do to be the first thing that somebody picks up, and I have a tangible end to invite them back into their day? And so we have a question of the day that I post every morning. I try to ask it before people wake up. And that way they can check our Discord first thing. They can know that there's questions to be answered. And then that's all. They can keep poking around the Discord if they want to, but like, there is one thing that doesn't take much time that can ideally be a replacement in their life. And so that's what I try to offer up. I also would offer up the work of Dan Pink. If you've never read any of his books or watched any of his YouTube videos, he's an exceptional speaker, has some great TED Talks, but is somebody very much on this line of thought, a thinker that is working into healthier ways of being online. So that would be something. And then one of the things that we discovered about our Discord server is a word that I put to it. I imagine everybody in here has been a part of a Discord before. If you have, there's a sidebar on the right side that has everyone who's in the server at a time. And I've grown up in the church my whole life. The church has hours. There are times where people are in the church. There are times where people are not in the church. The Discord server is not that way. There are always people in the Discord server. There are always people hanging out. And so I call it a monastic society. This is like a monastery. These are monks who are living in the space where they're diving in with scripture, where they're diving into the divine. So like, that is a part of your everyday life. So if you have that kind of, it's not a captive audience, but it is an audience that is present 24/7. What are you doing to provide meaningful life in those places? What are you doing to create a space that is life-giving in the midst of that? And so study the Desert Fathers, study those that are monastic, and see like, what was it that, aside from their vows, kept them entertained, kept them attached to those days and times together? What is it about that life that draws people together that we know we have a better way? How can we show them that we have a better way?
Yeah, that's really a good thing of like, you just go here every morning. Here's a simple thing. Here's a small thing. Here's a way to start. I like that concept of doing that. It's one of those things, like, we go back to Discord. I've wanted to develop that and do that, but that's not the way my brain works and is wired. I need a volunteer to do that, because I don't have a question of the day. Like, I just want to know how your day's going. That's where my brain's going. Not, I want to bring this to you on a daily basis. I need to be listening. Like, this was not my idea to say, hey, we should reset the algorithm. It was, I was listening in conversation, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. What I want to write about and what I want to go investigate is when someone says, here's a gap that the church is missing, and I'm going to go look it up. So I just put the link to this is not even published. Like, I literally wrote this like 2 days ago. So like, nobody's seen this. Like, I'm sharing it if you want to, anybody that wants that. And in there, I also listed 3 or 4 other resources of go here if you want other assistance and help like this. Here are ministries trying to address this, or they are public entities. They're not necessarily all ministries trying to do this, but they're just people saying there's a problem. How do we reshape? How do we change? How do we help impact people who get caught in doom scrolling, get caught in the echo chamber, and get more and more of negative things in their life? How do we help them out? So that's, like, for me, the one of the reasons why I don't stay put in one place. Like, I want to know what you're doing and hearing, and so I can hear any gaps in what you're doing that might help someone else fill in. So I'm gonna share the idea of pixel a game and do a pilgrimage that way, and bring people on a journey intentionally. Don't just let the game do it. Come alongside the game and do that. So it's like, I'm always learning, I'm always growing, and I want to help everyone in the ministry they're doing get better at what God's called them to do. Yeah, just clarification there. Trying to ask the noticing, avoiding, missing, and delighting.
So it's asking, what are you noticing? Like, being aware of your surroundings. What's missing? What's something that feels like it should be there? What are you taking delight in? And then what are you purposely avoiding? So it's not avoiding the distraction. It's what is something that you are finding yourself avoiding. So that's more of an avoidance, like psychological issue.
I love that question because honestly, like going through certain games, I can tell you, I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to avoid that. Why? I find it tedious, or I find it pointless to have to get to, like, I play a lot of Assassin's Creed, and the thing that I really, really don't like is you have to do this speed run and accomplish these things and do the. I avoid those. The only time I ever do those is when the game requires it for something to go forward. That's the only time I do it, and I'm always frustrated by it. I also avoid guns and weapons that you have to fire, not because I don't like those, but because there's no actual aiming mechanism when my hands are side by side. So I can't aim with 2 hands over here. My brain cannot line things up. You give me an actual sight of a bow and arrow or any kind of real weapon in the real world, I know how to sight things. I don't know how to do it in the game. There's probably something more going on there that I'm avoiding too. It's this is going to be frustrating. I don't want to be frustrated. I just want to rule this world that I'm in because the real world is frustrating. So I probably, that's probably part of those things. Like, I tried to go, like, the latest one I tried to do was Where Winds Meet, and I got part way in. I heard some good recommendations, and then there was this task where I had to shoot things with a bow and arrow, and I'm like, this game was cool, story was good, you forced me to do this. I don't know if I want to keep playing it.
You need them all to be the Wii with
oh yes,
Twilight Princess.
Right,
Yeah. The crossbow training. That's funny.
Yep. Anything else from Nerd Culture Ministry Summit? Just what does it do for you overall to make it worth your while to go and be in that space?
I mean, look, there's really nothing out there that has the word nerd culture, ministry, and summit together. Like, I mean, it was the thing that is a space that I have to be. My username is Nerd Pastor Nate. Like, I am in this. And so I need to be at the place where the conversation is happening. I think that the existing relationship that is already formed, like, I think somebody said this year that this always feels like a big family reunion.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. Like, this is a place that I've been a part of. I've invested years of my life into. These are people I've invested years of my life into. So it's an important gathering in a lot of different ways. And then I just really appreciate being able to hear from a myriad of people that are doing this work. I think that sometimes it's really hard to find the stories. It's really hard to find the successes, to find the people that are doing this, that keep doing it. And I've been in this long enough now, and I'm sure you can empathize that I've been in this to the point that I've seen a lot of people stop.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of things come to an end, and those are relationships that I try to keep up with, but like, a lot of them have fallen away, and I don't know those people anymore. And that makes me sad. And so having a space that I can see some of the vibrancy in the midst of some of the harshness of the realities of church planting or of community building, it's just nice. It's just a good place to be in community and seeing exciting things and learning things that are important and impactful for your own work.
Yeah, well, and some of those things would be true as well in church planting, where you have people that come along very early on and then
Mhm.
their vision for what you're going to do is slightly different than what you actually do, and then it's no longer new and shiny, and they're going to move on. And that is like, it's both. The thing that I get most excited about is going somewhere new and meeting new people. And the thing that is most frustrating is I have met more people than I will ever stay in relationship with because I don't have capacity to, and I don't expect to either. So it's not like I'm fretting over that, but there's some that's like, man, I really wish I still had that relationship with that person. I do mourn those relationships that have gone by the wayside. So whether you're in digital ministry or just in ministry, it is an aspect of what happens when you are trying to meet people where they are, and life is messy, and they move on or you move on to new locations, and you're trying to just live life. Not sure who you were asking that, Supersonic. If that was me, how about you just DM me that question later on? That might be a deeper conversation there with algorithms and that kind of a thing. But anyway, yeah, I love how you were talking about there is a family aspect, especially those who have been there, this being the third time. Those of us who are planning to be there next year, just tell me when it is. I'll book my ticket and I'll be ready to go. I'm actually hoping on some level, I don't know if this will happen or not, but with it being in Orlando, perhaps maybe there's a way to get my wife to actually come to this conference. Most every other thing she's not going to come to. But and part of it too is she doesn't want to be doxxed. She does not want to be walking around and everyone coming up to her talking about me. She does not want that. She wants to hide and fade in the. And one of the things I love at NCMS is that there are people that you wave across the room, and then it's not until like the end of the conference where they finally get courage to come up and talk to you, because there's not the, everybody is a little bit nerdy there and a little bit of shyness. Like I however, like feel really comfortable there. Like, this is my people. And, I'm more known by people that are showing up there than I even know. I don't know if you noticed this. So we had the conference for theChurch.digital for gaming in the fall, and met a guy from Germany who came in. We had great conversations. He was talking about going to go do evangelism in Discord servers, and helped him strategize and think through being a missionary going into that space. And he didn't know I was at the conference until Lux Digital Church is holding their worship service, and everybody who's, part of the church community come up here, and he mentions my name. He's like, "What? You're here?" So it was like, didn't even notice that I was there. And then we got talking and chatting, and I was like, man, how cool is the world to be able to meet somebody from Germany, go to a conference, and then hang out together, and they know all the other people from Germany that you know too. It's like, that's just
crazy.
Fun. I will say for me, and I don't know if you felt this or not at the conference, there was this overwhelming sense of those that have been there at previous years. Like, we had started on a journey together, and we were continuing on the journey. Like, this was still worthwhile. The things that we had in our minds that God had brought to us 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago in Marble Falls, whatever that was, 3 years ago, I don't remember exactly. It's still worth it. You're still on the journey. You're still following after it. And by seeing other friends who I knew were in that same place, it was like, we're all still going together. That was the thing that felt really good to me, was the, hey, I'm still seeing these people. Hey, I don't touch base monthly. We're doing our own ministries, but to see you here and to sit down with you for a lunch or a dinner or whatever it was and get to chat and hear what God's doing, is like, it's all worth it to continue where I am, because you're continuing where you are.
Absolutely.
Anything that we haven't talked about yet that you would really like to bring up and share with anybody?
Yeah, there's so much going on all of the time. I didn't really get a chance to talk about nerdy sermons, and that's kind of our week-to-week work that we do. We've got over 170 of these things at this point. If you're a video essay fan and you want to go back and watch through those, that's what they're inspired by, is some of the video essay writers that have inspired me over the while. So we've got over 170 pieces of media that we've essentially broken into these exegetical works of, I try and break down the media. I try to present a scripture that has a parallel moral or a dissonant moral, one that does not work together, so that I can exemplify why the scripture matters. And then I put them together. I say, isn't that interesting? And then I end it with a so what of a like, here's what that actually means for how you can implement it into your life. And so we have so many of those that we have to offer. Again, I try to think of churches in the work that we do, not assuming that people are going to come be a part of Checkpoint. And so we have a Bible study curriculum that we've built out for those as well. So if you want to ever like present the nerdy sermons as your Bible study video and then have discussion questions, games, that kind of stuff. If you're a youth director, we have all that stuff built and baked into the system. So that all exists. I didn't get to talk about the checkbox, which is a cool thing that we do. We do communion online, which some people are comfortable with and some are not, but we do it really intentionally. We wanted to make it something that we took sacramentally seriously. And so we send out the communion elements in a subscription box that is free, but also has a bunch of other goodies. So it reminds me of those good old days of Loot Crate. And then we bring people together for a live communion liturgy. And then we developed an app to go along with it that reminds us of our tactile tangibility in the moment, where we all feel like we're one in the midst of that moment. We're reminded of the oneness of the body and the oneness of the cup in the midst of that experience. So that's really important.
How often are you doing that? How often do you send the boxes out and gather for communion?
We are sending the boxes out quarterly now. So you get 12 and we do it every week. So every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, we hang out in the Discord and we observe the sacrament. We're fine with folks finding their own elements if they have to, but we would so much rather have people sign up and get them from us. There's nothing, liturgical about just praying over them before, but that's something important to me. And so I like sending out the elements from a unified space rather than just telling people to find something bread-like and juice-like. So yeah, we've taken it very seriously to try to figure out what does it mean to be a sacramental church, not just a community, but a true like digital first practicing church. We haven't figured out baptism, so that's something that will be another day solved. I see what XP Church is doing and see what a lot of other folks out there are doing, and I try to take that seriously as well. But we've not crossed that bridge at this point.
Okay. And I think that's one of those elements of sacraments, and each denomination, what your tradition is, having to wrestle through those on your own. There is no one size fits all. The same way that, for instance, I absolutely love the fact that there's 3 modes of baptism. Not a lot of people know that there's sprinkling, there's immersing, and there's pouring. Pouring be the one that's less likely for people to have ever experienced. Mm-hmm. But I think there's beauty within that, and I often tried to rotate which direction I would do to be able to enhance and bring out, hey, this isn't just rote. We're not just going through the motions. This is something valuable and important in our community. I also love that you're doing weekly communion. Like that is always, well, I shouldn't say always, since I've experienced it in some places, that has always been my preference, but it has not been my practice. We sometimes go in the direction of efficiency and ease rather than in our practices of doing some of those things. So rather than fight to try to get that all the time, I would say, hey, let's do it for Lent. Let's do communion every week through the season of Lent. And then people go, well, that was great. And I go, well, how about we do it all the time? Nah, I don't know that we need to do it all the time. And it's like, but you know how good it was. Yeah, we know how good it was. It's just not trusting that we can maintain that level on a constant basis when you have so I understand the struggle, but I would much rather have the experience of having it weekly. So I love that you're doing that.
It's been fun. It's been a transformative thing for the community. I think they've clicked with it really well. That is one of the helpful things about, I think, planting a church is that you can build in those cultural kind of groundstones rather than coming in and changing the color of the carpet, 50 years in.
Oh, yeah. Well, and yeah, baking in the communion being a piece is like our focus is always going to be on what Christ did for us that way. There is no chance of, well, we didn't mention, we're studying Old Testament, so we didn't get to Christ today. Or we just got busy singing some hymns and we didn't like, because you can do the activities of the church without focusing on Christ. But I don't know that you can do communion, at least in my opinion, without having focus on Christ. I don't know how you do it. The only way that I felt like I would have was I mentioned the church I was in, with shut-ins an hour away in 4 directions. they traditionally, whenever communion happened, got in the car after service and spent the next 8 hours driving around bringing communion to all of them. And I'm like, so you're going to give me drive-by communion? I'm going to show up. Here's the bread. Here's the cup. Drink it. I got to go. Because that's all I could, no. There's no relationship in that. And I think that the table is one of the best things to build relationship with people.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And that has been, like I said, one of the most transformative steps we've taken, I think, as a church. And I always encourage my leaders. I'm like, look, if you become a leader at Checkpoint, you really need to be there. This is the most formative thing that we do. Like, if I could ask you to come to one thing at all, like only one thing for the rest of Checkpoint's life, come on Sunday nights at 9:00 for communion. Like this is what we're doing. This is the work.
Oh, that's fantastic. Any other things that you wanted to mention?
Side projects like the book and Pixel and Pulpit are always worth checking out. Pixel and Pulpit is written like particularly from the learnings of a digital and nerd pastor. So if you're more interested in just kind of like the praxis stuff that I'm offering, you're welcome to check that out. Yeah, I'm on social media spaces. Anywhere that you can find Checkpoint Church or Nerd Pastor Nate, those are going to be the places that I'll encourage you to check out. But I'm always doing something. I'm always active somewhere. We got a lot of irons and a lot of fire. So it's a good work, but it's a lot of work. And pretty much anywhere you can find us is going to be exciting. We had a lot around the corner, a lot of cool things coming up. Some new podcasts in the work from a peer of mine, and then just growing the church community as we always are.
That's fantastic. Such a privilege to have you on and be able to be in this space. I love highlighting what other people are doing. Several ideas. Like, one of the hopes is that somebody listening to this is ready to go, doesn't know if what God is calling them to is legitimate or not. And maybe it's a church planter out there that just needed to have encouragement to say, yeah, you weren't planning on doing digital, but now maybe you are. You weren't planning on going gaming, but God can bless that if you answer the call, and that's the call he's given to you. So thank you for being on here. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us today. It's such a privilege to be able to be here and to chat with you.
I appreciate you hosting the time and inviting me on. I'm always happy to come back and talk anytime.
Yeah. I do like to have the guest give us a recommendation so we can do a double rate out to somebody and bless them, unless you're going to stay on, which you already said you're not. So do you have a suggestion of who we can go and rate out?
Do I have anybody streaming right now is the bigger question. Is Jate still live? I know 17 hours. Is that still going on? I don't see him, so he might not be. He might have taken a break.
Nope, I don't see him on.
Let's see.
Yep, we could absolutely go over there if you want to.
They're on my sidebar. So truth be told, y'all, I'm not streaming. I'm about to probably come back. So don't tell anybody that I told you that. But we're working on a return to Twitch, a potential return to streaming on a more consistent basis. But I have not been on in so long. So I don't know anyone anymore. I only know the people that I used to know. So if there's any new folks, let me know.
Oh, well, there's always a growing list. Well, I hit the donk a couple of years ago of how many people you can actually follow. So I had to go unfollow people that actually weren't streamers because I hit the max amount. So, all right.
If you unfollowed Checkpoint at the time, go follow him back, because we are officially probably going back. Don't know when, but
no. I've not unfollowed Checkpoint. I unfollowed people that did not have a logo and had less than 100 followers, because it's like, oh, you never actually set something up. Like early on, I'd go into a Christian stream and I'd go into a stream and find Christians. I'd start following every Christian that was around because there weren't that many to begin with. And so now it's like, oh, right. No. Now I don't need to do that. We could find each other. There's tags and all of that stuff. So, all right. I'll get this started and we will rate out. So thank you.
Awesome.
Again, everyone. Appreciate you being here, hanging out with me. I'll show the credits in a minute. The podcast that is scheduled for Tuesday, I believe I'm going to have to reschedule, but I will be on next Thursday. So other than that, come and check out the Church Digital. Go and check out Checkpoint Church and just keep doing what God's calling you to do in the space.
Love it. All right. Thanks again. And hope to catch some of you around